Welcome to the 28th Annual Conference of the International Environment Forum, a Baha'i-inspired professional organization for the environment and sustainability. The overall theme of this year's conference is a world-embracing vision for a sustainable future, consisting of 4 virtual events. The first was last Saturday on the 14th, a vision for a sustainable future, a conversation with youth. So we had youth perspectives. And then on the 17th, we had a wonderful discussion developing a vision for global collaboration, looking at global governance issues. This event, the third of our conference, is on building futures in communities, looking at how we look at futures from the local community perspectives and what we're learning at the community level. And then next Saturday, the 28th, we'll have a last element. Where do we go from here? Deeds, not words. So we sort of evaluate the results of the Summit of the Future and what that means for going forward. This conference is associated with this United Nations meeting, the Summit of the Future in New York. It had action days yesterday, the day before, with a whole series of interesting presentations. And then the Intergovernmental Summit is meeting today and tomorrow, and has just adopted a Pact for the Future and other declarations. The Summit of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reconsider what is wrong with global governance and what changes are required to address the urgent needs of today. The Pact for the Future includes 56 actions under 5 themes. The first, sustainable development and financing for development. The second, international peace and security. The third, science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. The fourth, on youth and future generations, which we addressed in our first event. And then the last, transforming global governance, the topic of the second event this last week. Our last conference event will review the results of the summit and discuss ways forward, both for the IEF and more broadly. We have also partnered in some other side events, mostly yesterday. We had a launch the second charter, modernizing the UN for the new generation. What is next for global governance, from the impact coalitions, the Summit of the Future, the road to the Summit of the Future, generating impact for the future, and then the room for optimism, with the Baha'i international community leading that all yesterday. We hope that you find your participation in our IEF conference enlightening and useful. We shall make a report on the conference available on our website after the conference, where you can also find the reports of all our previous conferences and many other useful resources. If you like our work and share our values, you might want to consider joining the IEF. We've already, in fact, posted video clips and the recording of that youth discussion and the complete recording of the discussion of governance issues last week. And we hope to post the results of this event soon after the event as well. Now I turn over to our moderator for this event, Peter Adrians, who for many years represented the American Baha'i community in external affairs and is now retired in Canada and has rejoined us. He's been a long-term participant in the Environment Forum, and so I'm happy to invite him to lead the discussion today. Thank you very much. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Arthur. It's a delight to be here and to be reconnecting with the International Environment Forum and to be moderating this panel, which to me it's exciting because it represents on-the-ground initiatives. The panelists in this panel are going to report and reflect on various local projects aimed at enhancing environmental sustainability and human well-being. Each of these projects are examples of on-the-ground initiatives in local communities, which, though not inspired by the Pact for the Future, are complementary to it, to its aspirations and goals. All of them embody both benefits for the future as well as the present. And we're going to hear about a reforestation project in Iceland, community gardening initiatives in both Singapore and the United Arab Emirates. We're going to hear also about agricultural and environmental education in Colombia, South America. And finally, also in South America, the collaborative relief work that took place following recent devastating floods in Brazil. So we are going to start out in Iceland with Halldór Thorgeirsson. I'm not going to read the full bios of each of the panelists because they're available on the website, but let me just say that Halldór is currently with the Icelandic Climate Council for the last 6 years, and he also served as senior director in the UN Climate Change Secretariat. I am delighted to have Halldór kick us off here. Halldór, take it away.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for the invitation to contribute to this panel. And I'll, as Peter mentioned, I'll take you to Iceland and tell you a bit of a story of long-standing land reclamation and reforestation effort in a location in Iceland called Skógar, which is actually in Icelandic the word for forest. I will start with the history of it and the genesis of it, and it goes back to the early years of the faith in Iceland, and it was started by a pioneer in reforestation in Iceland. He was one of the early Baha'is in Iceland. His name was Joachim Eggertsson. And he was born in 1896 and lived until 1966. And he had training in agriculture and dairy processing, but he was very curious about kind of what could grow in Iceland and what would be the kind of the boundaries of the possible there. And he started with experimenting with tree planting around 1950 in Skógar, which is also the birthplace of his uncle Matthías Jochumsson, one of the best beloved poets of Iceland. And Iceland literature is a very big part of Icelandic culture. And so Matthías is the author of the national anthem, and a lot of his poetry still lives with the nation. And this image gives you, this is from the site and from the part of the farm where Joachim did most of his work, starting there, as I mentioned, in the middle of last century. He was testing different varieties, seeing what kind of plants could be brought to that site and what that would thrive and grow. And in 2020, we got a very interesting kind of recognition, or the project got the recognition. The Icelandic Forest Association identified or selected one of the trees that Joachim had planted as the tree of the year, and it's an annual event where they pick one tree, and this was during the COVID years, and when they were explaining the selection, and there's a photo there from the ceremony that was held there when this was dedicated, that this tree kind of exemplified the resilience. It was bent but not broken, and this was a great kind of encouragement for us to have that national recognition of the efforts. But this has been continued by the Baha'i community, and so the priority actions within that effort One that takes quite a bit of effort is to protect part of the property from sheep grazing with electric fence. This area is a rural area. It's not the easiest place in Iceland to grow trees. And during the early stages of tree planting, sheep grazing is a threat. So we have to protect the area from grazing, and that takes quite a bit of effort. 86 hectares of land are now under a 40-year contract with the Forest Service, where they provide us with plant material, and we do the planting, and they work with us in surveying the results and following the development. But we have also done what could be called land reclamation, because there's quite a bit of erosion that has happened with the course of time, also a result of grazing, by seeding grasses and putting fertilizers on denuded land. And then as the forest has become more attractive and more interesting, we've put effort into making the site more accessible to visitors for a reflection in nature. And this is a service or a role for forest that is becoming more recognized now for spiritual development, to have access to the peace and quiet of forest area for reflection. And this shows, these images give you an image of some of the activities, the plants that have been put down there in these containers, and tree planting with a young girl there, and one of the bridges were opened and opened up a path through the forest without having to cross any of the small rivers on the side. But this it's also it's important also to reach out to the broader community. And initially, the farmers were concerned about our effort. They thought this might be a threat to their continued sheep grazing. But they have now grown to understand that we are there for the long term. We have also opened up some of the farm for grazing, unlimited grazing, because that area is in a condition to take that. To build bridges to the community, we've also invited them to visit the site, to see what we're doing, and they've shown quite a bit of interest in it. We've also more recently started, the National Baha'i community has started organizing summer camps in a school not far from the site, and then a visit to the site is an integral part of that summer camps program. So this was an effort to tell you about this area. One thing I would maybe wish to conclude by saying is that for those of us that have been working on it for quite some time, we found it very rewarding. It does take patience. It is a lot of work, but it also brings a lot of spiritual bounties to work together on an effort like this. And the site itself, the full farm, is also the national endowment site for the Baha'i community of Iceland. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Halldór. Thank you so much, Halldór. That was quite beautiful. I'd love to get to that site someday and enjoy the forest there, learn more about it. Our next presenter is Janice LEONG. She's an active member of the Baha'i community in Singapore. Janice is engaged deeply in social action and building vibrant communities in her neighborhood. She's going to share with us her experience with a community gardening initiative in Singapore. So Janice, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, I'm Janice Leong. Yeah, and a retired an active senior member of the Baha'i community living in downtown Singapore. The title of my talk is Community Gardening in Singapore, Engaging the Young, Youth, and Seniors. I'll briefly give the outline of my talk, how it came about, what inspired the core group, where, when, what we do, and our shared vision, followed by a few pictures of our Rizwan garden at Mount Emily, and the devotional gatherings every Monday at the House of Rizwan. It started in May 2021 during COVID. I love gardening and realized in an urban area, it is hard to find space to plant. Living next to Mount Emily Park, I see an empty patch. My estate is small. I wrote to the National Parks Board to request to grow fruit trees, vegetables, and herbal plants for medicinal purposes. Thankfully, I was guided to work with the adjacent kindergarten at Mount Emily called Schoolhouse. The principal management were involved with friends with planting experience to form the core team. There were some banana and curry leaf trees, about 50 square meter. We are now 200 square meter. Indeed, a great fiscal transformation for Singapore. Yeah, the consultations were done with the school, and our focus was to grow sustainably and organically. The aim was to inspire the young and old to love Mother Earth, practice reuse, reduce, and recycle. Personally, aside from the love for gardening, the following 30th December 2021 message from the Baha'i World Center reaffirms the work we do. I quote, "In urban settings too, friends living there have succeeded in carrying out activities and projects suited to the social environment, at times by working with local schools, agencies of civil society, or even government bodies." Shortly after, another inspiration for a common space at the House of Rizwan for the neighborhood came, about where we were able to gather together to pray with all interfaith friends for the well-being of Singapore. Rizwan Garden Mount Emily is on Google Map. It is our green gym, you know. Yeah. Situated in the park next to the children's playground and the kindergarten. Parents, children, park goers will pop by to see what's going on. Gardening days are on every Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sunday mornings. The working team will do gardening, and interested friends are invited to join our WhatsApp chat group. The core team will plan out weekly activities and announce with the WhatsApp Rizwan Garden group. We share the photos, update the community of what's done and need to be done, share the harvest with our friends present and community partners. We hold regular consultations with the school and national parks for support. We also seek advice for the garden. They assist in grass cutting, the initial expansion, and also providing water and maintenance. Yeah, financial help for maintenance. The area is home to friends with diverse cultures. Friends share the experience, and we learn together on ways to improve our yield. We outreach to community partners to recycle used tires as pots, reuse soybean waste, eggshells, spent ground coffee, orange peel, fresh kitchen waste as organic compost. We manufacture our own soy probiotics. For the vegetable soy beds, we recycle wooden crates, bricks to act as barriers for the weeds. We participate actively in our resident committees under the Member of Parliament for our area. The yearly picnic events brings the community together. We have a booth and organize tours to our garden, and the school kindergarten invite us to help educate their young children and learn about our Rizwan garden. We promote our garden by sharing what our garden produce. One highlight being the making of herbal drinks. The herbal drinks are beneficial to one's physical well-being. A list of 8 herbal drinks come from our garden, is shared with friends attending the events or prayer meetings and doing gardening. The benefits are to reduce blood sugar, weight loss, cholesterol, high blood pressure, and also anti-cancer, our modern illnesses. Our shared vision is to cultivate across all age groups how, in the urban area, we can create possibilities to build a sustainable and greener Singapore in our neighborhoods, creating opportunities where we can advance collectively for the common good of humanity. As the park is open, we sometimes do have pillage. People steal. Service to humanity is service to God, and I'd like to end this talk by sharing a beautiful hidden word on our banner. Oh friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant not but the rose of love. There are some pictures of the garden to give you some impression. The work of the garden is never ending. We continually need volunteers, financial support, and contributions in kind from friends and partners. I wish all a wonderful conference. Well, if you come to Singapore, come to our Rizwan Garden. Enjoy. That's our devotion. Okay. Thank you.
Amazing. Well done. It's so exciting to see these kind of things happening at the local level that are so multidimensional. You know, you talk about health and education.
Yes.
And, you know, it just, it's great. So thank you very much. And now, you know, we have another community gardening initiative also that Ayman is going to share with us. Ayman Reyhan is cluster coordinator for the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program in Ajman, United Arab Emirates. And so it's another project. It'll be interesting to see how this compares to what's happening in Singapore. Ayman, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts on the gardening project in Ajman. My name is Ayman, and I live in a United Arab Emirates and multicultural neighborhood known as Ajman One Towers. And Ajman One Towers comprises many residential buildings surrounding a central common area like community center, swimming pool, language center, a mosque, a walking path, a gym, and a community center managed by the local residents, along with comprises an underdeveloped plot of land allocated for gardening. Our diverse community comprises people from various nationalities and religious affiliation. Yet interaction between them, these groups are very not common. In this talk, I will highlight the significance of enhancing community awareness and rekindling our connection with nature by utilizing gardening as a means to unite people around a shared goal. This service project has strengthened community ties and fostered a greener and more connected neighborhood. I have privilege of serving as animator for Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program inspired by the Baha'i faith. This program aims to support youth aged 12 to 15 in developing a strong moral foundation helping them to express themselves and direct their energies toward community service. And the idea of this service project came from my junior youth groups, and it's emerged from them. And its aims was uniting our community around the shared goal for creating a greener environment. Given the available plot of land, proceeding with the initiative was practical. After consulting with friends in the neighborhood, we decided to send 2 representatives to the property management for further discussion to seek the permission. And initially, the management's response was negative. But through subsequent meetings that addressed misconceptions, they eventually agreed to allow us to utilize the land. Once we received from the management that they accept approval, we held meeting to discuss landscaping and cooperation and improvement to the area. But after persistent engagement with the management, we successfully installed an automatic timer and new irrigation connections to support the garden health. Regular follow-ups ensured the removal of dead plants and the reorganizations of the planting area. The garden was divided into sections to improve accessibility for children, for youth, for adults, and to encouraging participation from all age groups to participate. And we hosting these activities, planting activities every Friday. So the day that most of families are available, and inviting children and youth along with their parents to engage these social action project. And small plants are already provided there to encourage active participation in the gardening process. And before each session, we dedicate time to clean the garden and removing trash and dead plants to maintain a welcoming environment. And recently, new LED lights were installed outside the community center, so allowed the neighborhood to appreciate the greener even at night. During our activities, we assign roles. So one person manages of the entrance, another captures photos, and other facilitate the conversations and guide participants. Also, this service project is still in very early stage, and we're facing a lot of challenges, but it has successfully united our community, our neighborhood members around a common goal. And people from diverse nationalities and religious background are coming together in harmony to contribute to greener environment. Neighbors who previously never interacted are now collaborating toward a common objective. Some parents are now not only dedicating their time and energy to this effort, and also bringing plants from home to enhance the garden. And many neighbors have expressed their appreciation for this service project, with some feeling inspired to enhance the greenery in their home. Through these initiatives, we aimed not only to beautify our neighborhood, but also to foster a sense of belonging and community spirit. We are hopeful that this initiative will cultivate a thriving garden that nurtures both our environment and our relations with one another in our neighborhood. Thank you. Okay. This picture is the first day before we are starting planting service project. This is the first day of service project planting. Yes. You can see the picture, community members preparing the land together. Youth and adults and junior youth all are working together. If we see elderly also are even helping. God bless his efforts. They are helping the junior youth and helping children to preparing the land. We see here now junior youth are trying, because the land wasn't prepared. Everything from scratch, they start to preparing to and planting. Yes, here we can see everyone, junior youth, and we can see also different nationalities, different ages, but all the same purpose, same aim, to make our neighborhood greener. And yes, and this is the flower that first week in the end of the first week of this project, beginning of this service project. We can see the changes. We can see the flowers that the junior youth and community they make it. Yes, from different angles. Yes. We can see that even the children, they came with the parents, and many of the family, they standing out and encouraging the junior youth and supporting and watching what is happening inside the garden. Yes, here we see also members from neighborhood and also the junior youth here. And it's very nice to see that they are everyone joyfully contribute to this activity. It's very nice. We look, we say everyone is smiling, everyone happy that they are contributing and doing service for the community, even from junior youth to adults to children. It's very nice to see everyone enjoying and contribute. Yes. And it was new culture that supporting all different nationalities was they were supporting each other and helping and yes, even and as we in the speech we say that it's a very long process, and now we start with half of the garden. It's a big land, but we started with approximately half of this land, and yes, and it's hopefully a long process, and it's take help from all community neighborhood for this planting service project to make our environment more greenery, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ayman. That's very inspiring. I saw the first early pictures, you know, there was not much there, and it's transformed over the time that you've been doing this. And the social dimensions of it also struck me as being really quite profound, bringing people together. There will be plenty of time for questions. I see the chat is active and questions are coming in. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them after the collective presentations are completed. So next, we're going to go to Colombia, South America, where Amelia Hedley undertook an internship at FUNDAEC, an organization that is focused on the application and teaching of science, but in particular, its preparation for social action program. This has been an ongoing initiative for many years in Colombia, and a lot of learning has taken place there. Amelia is an undergrad student studying English with a focus on education and literacy. So Amelia, welcome. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen here. So as was mentioned, I'll be speaking about the preparation for social action program, PSA in Colombia, from FUNDAEC. So FUNDAEC, as was mentioned, it stands for the Foundation for the Application and Teaching of Science. So it's an NGO formed in Colombia in the 70s and is actually this year celebrating its 50th anniversary. It has a rich history of carrying out action and research related to education, development, agriculture, and more throughout these years. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of its initiatives, though there's many more things that FUNDAEC is involved in. So one of them is the PSA program, which I will be talking more about. Another one is the Growing Hope Project, which is an initiative that involves working with farmers in several communities of northern Cauca, Colombia, to move towards regenerative agricultural practices. So this includes workshops, it includes visits to the farms, and sort of that level of accompaniment. FUNDAEC itself also has established an integral farm for regenerative agriculture. And this farm is basically used as an educational space for farmers and students, students both from the junior youth program and also from the Baha'i school that is in the region and other institutions, for people to come and basically learn what regenerative agriculture looks like in practice. And then another project that it has in this region is the native food forest. So this is a plot of land that was acquired, 11.5 hectares of land that was acquired when the local house of worship was purchased. And so basically that used to be a land for sugarcane monoculture and now has been in a process of transformation towards planting these native species, and in particular focused on food trees. So there in the bottom right corner, you can kind of see some of the junior youth engaged in that space. So in my internship, I was there for a year in the region of northern Cauca, Colombia. And I was working primarily with the preparation for social action program. So that's mostly what I will be able to speak to. But of course, this is just part of FUNDAEC's experience, and I won't be able to share so much as a representative of FUNDAEC, but just more so my understanding and experience from that internship. So the PSA program stands for the Preparation for Social Action. It is designed to raise up and train members of a community to become promoters of community well-being. So this program is focused on the role that true integrative and purposeful education can play on the advancement of a community and a population. So these promoters of community well-being are individuals who are trained both in material and physical kind of knowledge of sciences, technology, math, language, and about community life processes, but also has this spiritual element of it, which I'll be speaking a little bit more to. And all of these are helping members of a community to be actively thinking about its well-being and impelling others along this process to think critically about the conditions of their community and where they want to go. And so at the core of this program is a series of 24 texts, 7 of which are from the Reyhan Institute, the first 7 books of the Reyhan Institute's courses, and the other 17 of which are focused on these other subjects which I mentioned. And not only is this program focused on the study, but as you can see, there's a lot of practical components, service projects, investigations and research in the community, scientific experiments. And so not only is it learning and applying knowledge, but it's also helping to generate knowledge, what that looks like for that community, basically. So I wanted to highlight a couple of the agriculture and environmental texts. But just as a preface to that, PSA's approach is inherently very integrative and cohesive, so it wouldn't be sufficient to, think about these promoters of community well-being as only focused on the environment or, studying certain concepts and trading in certain capacities without looking at other things. For example, the ability to consult with others, developing that capacity, or the discipline and focus to learn through systematic action and documentation which approaches are effective. So I'm highlighting these texts which might more directly address the subject that we're discussing. But of course, what's really beautiful about PSA is that it trains members in a variety of concepts and subjects that then allow them to apply what they're learning here. So these are some of the names of those texts. And then I'm going to be sharing a little bit about one of those texts, which is called Planting Crops. So this is the first unit of the text, Food Production on Small Plots. So these photos were taken over 2 weekend intensives with tutors in the region. And so you can see photos of us carrying out some of the practices and experiments. One of which in that first photo is testing of the pH levels of soil collected in different areas of that farm. The second one is an experiment involving testing different factors that affect soil erosion from water. In that fourth photo, there's a group visiting the integral farm for regenerative agriculture, and several other experiments. And one of the lessons actually in the text is talking about the concept of urban gardens. So that one, often the practice arises of establishing and maintaining a community garden, an urban garden. So sort of related to some of the other presentations. And then I was going to share a bit about transforming the environment, which is a tree planting project that arose sort of as a service project of PSA groups around Colombia. So what's really special about this tree planting project is the level of ownership that comes from the PSA groups across Colombia, as well as community members associated to those groups. So this kind of ensures a lot of more of a long-term sustainable approach to tree planting, as well as the level of accompaniment, of follow-up, of workshops that are involved, to ensure that really the trees that are planted aren't just to portray a certain number, to say that FUNDAEC has planted X amount of trees, but that it's really part of a long-term path towards taking care of our environment. And so community members are aware of the importance of this work, are also trained in how to care for and make sure that these trees don't die within, the first 6 months or so. So these are just some of the things involved in the PSA program. And I guess the overall focus of the program and its relationship to the environment is really focused on education.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Well, we're seeing some common threads through these projects. One of the things that to me is very exciting is the degree of ownership. You talked about, how people feel like this is an integral part of what they're about and the future of their community. And I see that in all these other projects as well. I didn't mention in the beginning, and I meant to, that we had a project on coral reef restoration that was going to be part of this workshop. But unfortunately, the presenter, Tavita from Samoa, had a family emergency and he's unable to participate today. So our best wishes are with him and his family. And we will hope for the best for him, and now switch over to Brazil, where we have 3 panelists who are going to share their presentation about the collaborative efforts around the flooding that took place in Brazil that was so devastating. It was an incredible confluence of climate change and its impact that we've been hearing about for years, that this is coming. Well, here it is. The 3 panelists are Luisa Yazdani. She is a 26-year-old Brazilian Baha'i and a psychologist working as a therapist with individuals and families. And then the second panelist will be Dr. Lucas Ampere-Kanter. He's a biomedical scientist and holds a PhD in molecular and cellular biology. And then finally, Dr. Andre Akavan is a physician specialized in anesthesiology and pain medicine. All 3 of these panelists are very involved with community outreach and development. And we'll see how that factored in to the relief efforts in Brazil. So thank you for being here, and take it away, Luisa.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about the effects of community building on the approach to a climate disaster in Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. Rio Grande do Sul is the southernmost state of Brazil, and it has 11 million inhabitants. On May 2024, we were affected by intense flooding, collapsing all the infrastructures as the schools, hospitals, supermarkets, and we didn't have water and energy supplies. We had about 50 to 70 centimeters of precipitation in just 6 days, which is the equivalent of 1/3 of the expected rain in a whole year. On the right image below, you can see a satellite picture before the floods, and on the top one after the floods in May. And on the right picture, there is it's Porto Alegre, which is the capital of Rio Grande do Sul. So many people had to leave their houses, and they were rescued. Many of them were rescued by civilians who helped in this process. Because no one was prepared for something like this, our state doesn't have a story of recurrent flooding. So about 2,400,000 people were affected, and 600,000 people displaced for their homes. They stayed in universities and schools, which were being used as shelters, but there was not enough space to attend everyone. And many people also stayed at families or friends' houses, homes that were usually with 4 or 5 people living there, suddenly were receiving 15 to 20 people to shelter, and many of the households didn't have water or power supply. And the water, it took about a month for the water to recede, and this is the way that people found their houses after about a month. And here is a picture of the airport during the floods, and until now the airport's not working.
So I will continue now sharing a little bit about the activities that took places in the neighborhoods and our efforts to build community. So the Baha'i community has many activities going on for many years, but was in 2019 when reading the guidances from the Universal House of Justice, we really tried to work on smaller areas in the focus areas and how to empower a local population to be, to own this process. So we systematically started to visit one neighborhood and to every single day go to home visits and to reflect about the power of transformation and education on a specific neighborhood. And this was so amazing because the local friends started to create this sense of ownership and see how they themselves can be responsible for the education of children, the junior youth, about how they can bring, improvements in their own neighborhoods. And it was truly how we can see the capacity in each individual. Because sometimes we used to think, oh, this mother is so busy, she doesn't have time, or this youth is so busy, but how really every single individual have a potential, even with a limited time. So this started to grow so fast that started to spread to different neighborhoods. So we had different neighborhoods across 3 cities that emerged as the center of intense activities that were basically started from local friends consulting on a regular basis, reflecting together and going out together to improve their own reality. So this systematic path of action started more like in 2019 until this day is going with a lot of intensity, and it really has transformed the social reality of many of those families, because it's a constant consultation that they have about how they can improve, to change the world. So this was very, very, amazing because it was we could connect with the disaster that happened in a very natural way. And here we had some pictures of the activities that the neighbors promote and sustain. And now we have something around 8,000 to 9,000 people directly involved in activities. And if you think about conversation, this number is even greater. So now I'll just ask Andrea to share a little bit about how the disaster and this process came together.
So with Lucas's context of what had been going on in these neighborhoods before the floods this year, what's interesting is that these areas which had intense activities, community building activities, were not directly affected by the floods, but very nearby areas, so like few hundred meters or maybe 1 or 2 kilometers nearby, were affected by the floods, because the areas were affected in a sort of a patchy way. So these areas which we were working with and other friends were also working with, they weren't directly affected, but then thousands of people from these affected areas which had these floods had to flee and go to these neighboring areas. And so they were seeking shelter. There were shortages of food, water, electricity, power outages, and waterborne illnesses as well. So these areas actually started receiving a large number of displaced people. And so, as Luisa said in the beginning, many of these houses, which were used to receiving like 4 or 5 people, were having 20, 25 people in very difficult conditions. And so this framework, which Lucas was talking about of action, which involves involving local people and creating capacity in these people, instead of a passive way of working. So using this framework, an initial group of local neighbors, some of which are in the photo you can see, they met and they consulted about what the needs were at that moment, on what had to be done, on disseminating information, and they finally took action based on what was consulted. And so what's interesting is that all of these ideas, they began and initiated from ideas of the neighbors themselves, and not from some outside influence or some other organization. And so actions were based on creating capacity. So how when this core group took action, they were from the very beginning preoccupied with identifying other neighbors which could continue and expand these actions, because small numbers probably will get to a limit to what they can do, but if these actions are disseminated, then a larger number of people can get this benefit. And so I'm going to give one example of one of the actions which they decided to undertake. Since we didn't have access to proper water for consumption, to drink, this was identified by some of the neighbors that we don't have water to drink. We were getting a lot of donations of bottled water, but obviously it wasn't enough for everyone. So we had to think about ways to make water drinkable to prevent waterborne illnesses. And the group came up with a simple solution which involved chlorine, treating water with chlorine. And so in the pictures, you can see some home visits, the picture on the right. And what's interesting is that these people already knew each other because of the activities that were done previously. So everything was very streamlined because everyone knew each other. This pattern of action was already known by everyone. So it was basically nothing new. So it was just a continuation of what was already being done, but in a different context. And here in the pictures, you can see on the left, some of the instructions which were given to be able to make water proper to drink. Some of the characteristics which facilitated these actions were a collective sense of belonging, a deeper understanding of the connections between individual and collective well-being. So everyone had this idea that everyone has to have access to, drinkable water. Everyone has to have access to this accurate information. These are moments where a lot of disinformation also spreads around about numerous issues. So being able to disseminate accurate information was very important because people already knew each other and trusted each other. So dissemination of information was very facilitated. So these close ties between neighboring families and this previous habit of visiting each other was also very important to be able to quickly and decisively act from the very beginning. And a sense of hope is something that is very sometimes overlooked, but is very important in these moments of difficulty. And so two other actions which were taken just as an example, but we won't enter into any details, were how to this group talked about promoting basic hygiene in a context where no one had water or power for many weeks. And another issue was taking care of the education of children which had lost their schools to the floods. Thank you very much for your attention.
I can't imagine being thrust into a situation like that and being able to act as you did without some kind of foundation that you described, which is so wonderful that was actually in place before the flooding happened and allowed people to really truly work together. So, through all of these initiatives, we've seen collective action, some in response to urgent and disastrous circumstances, others inspired by local needs and desires, all of them knitting people together in a community and people feeling a sense of ownership. So I think that's kind of a common thread that I picked up from these, and it's very inspiring to see, how kind of the social foundation for the future is being laid within each of these projects. All of them have, of course, intense environmental aspects, but the social and environmental are obviously deeply intertwined. Do any of the panelists have questions for each other?
I would like to learn the UAE Ayman, is it? Yeah, on the irrigation system that you've implemented. I'm about to do that for the garden to save water.
Yes, about water, yes, it's provided through government supply. The landscaping company is constantly follow up for water piping and filling up of the tank, and even the timely irrigations of the land. But in the beginning of the service project, before these systems, junior youth and community together members were filling up water's bottle and regular water, watering the plant. It was yeah. For around maybe more than 1 month, maybe 2 months, it was like this, filling up waters and yes.
Yeah.
Bottles with waters and
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We Mount Emily Park is on a hill, so I need water. Otherwise, I have to carry water up the hill.
So what are you doing to get water?
Oh, the school provides the water, so they extended the pipe to outside so we can water. Now that I'm in New York for a month, we have got a group of people scheduled to water the plants. So when I go back, I will have irrigation system set up.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Halldór, do you find similar challenges with providing water, or is that taken care of easily there?
Yeah, no, we can rely on rainfall in most years, yes. But I think Rebecca is back online.
Yes, there was a question about the integration of these initiatives with junior youth groups, children classes, and study circles, and also about how the different protagonists, such as individuals, communities, institutions, relate to one another and their role within these initiatives.
I mean, for Singapore, the children class part of for me, because I'm a children class teacher as well. So the children come to do service in the garden. The youth from all over Singapore, they also come to help the youth JY programs. They send the youth to do service in the garden. Yeah. So that's what our children classes will bring the children during holidays to do service in the garden, part of their projects as well.
In southern Brazil, was there a collaboration with institutions as well as the community?
Yes, because this process of building community is very like one process with the institutions, always consulting. So when the floods happened, the institutions helped a lot. And because we have this process going on, the flux, so like how the donations and everything came from different areas to the south of Brazil, the institutions help to, direct to the centers of intense activities.
Oh, interesting. Obviously basic needs were such an issue there. Food, water, sanitation. You spoke about purifying the water, which is essential, of course. How about food supply? Did you guys get involved with that?
Yeah, because half of the city was basically destroyed and the other half was not flooded. So basically, the other half of the cities were really like engaged in helping and volunteering. But this impact in the incoming of foods and groceries for the supermarket and stuff, because the airport was closed, the highways are closed. So basically this was a huge challenge, but for, let's say, a month, what really helped was the incoming of donation from all the other states of Brazil and even other countries from South America.
And if I may just add, it was very interesting how we noticed a change, a shift, just not just in Rio Grande do Sul, but in other states of Brazil. We noticed that truly there was a shift in terms of people's desire to be able to contribute and help to their fellow Brazilians who were going through this. So it was very interesting to see this change in the mood in the whole country, which lasted for those few weeks and months.
Sometimes the bright side of disasters, it brings our communities together. And that's lovely to see. Rebecca, are there other questions?
There are very specific questions to Halldór about there's been questions about the species that were planted and the conditions of the land, and about whether you were able to protect the trees to allow them to grow because of the extreme weather, and how did you know which trees to plant?
Maybe one thing to, by way of context, I think it's good to explain that when Iceland was settled by the Norse settlers or the Vikings at the end of, about 974, about 40% of the island was covered with birds and willows, woodland and willows. And that's now down to 1.5%. So there has been a very massive deforestation through overgrazing, too much grazing, especially earlier on over the winter periods. And so the island, even though grazing pressure has been reduced significantly, it still takes time for this to recover. And so on the site, we're basically working on two fronts. One is to help the native birds recover, and we've done a lot of planting of the native birds, and that's our preferred course of action. But we are also, in some areas, we're also planting introduced species that have been demonstrated to be suitable for the conditions in Iceland, mainly conifers, and so there's a combination of these two. The biggest, in terms of challenges, the biggest challenge actually is wind, and including wind during the winter. And so in some areas, where on the more exposed areas, we have done some experimentation with putting up shelters to shelter the plants in the beginning, but it's too labor intensive to be scaled up to large scale. So we're doing more kind of step by step, bringing in new plants, taking shelter of the plants that are already there. So it's a step by step. Very often you get knocked back, but you continue. In terms of what plants really work, it's a continuous experimentation, but we are very much focusing on the species that have done best in the past. So we've built up quite a bit of experience on the site that we are using for the selection of future trees. But I think by and large, we are coming to, I don't think we will necessarily be putting enormous focus on planting more trees now, but to put more emphasis in attending to the plants that are already there, helping them, and also to open up the forest and making it more accessible for reflection and connection to nature.
To me, that raises the question of the long-term vision of each of the initiatives that we have here. Do you want to speak to that at all, Halldór?
Yeah, I mean, it's by doing something like this, you are committing yourselves for the long term. But in strange ways, nature gives back and gives you encouragement. And so once you're in that kind of cycle, it's really difficult to stop. But it's not for everyone. Let's be honest. We don't need the whole community focusing on this, but there's a core group that focuses on this. But it also demonstrates to the outside world that the Baha'is are contributing to society, that we are giving, and we also are here for the long term. And we're also making more efforts now to open this effort up so that volunteers don't need to be Baha'is that come and join us. So in many ways, this can be also a path into the faith to get engaged on this.
Great. I see Arthur has his hand up. Arthur.
Well, there's some recent compilations of research showing how important contact of nature is for good health. It's not mental health, spiritual health, material health, and in many different ways. I mean, people who've had an operation, you have plant a tree outside the window, get better faster than those that don't see the vegetation. There are many different ways in which it's beneficial. They've even found it is not only, say, the colors, the smells. Often plants give off compounds that have effects on the immune system, for instance, and can help with healing. And the sound of birds singing has a calming effect on people. So in a world with more and more specific in urban areas, anything that can be done to green the urban areas, to create gardens, children can learn where the food comes from. This is not just something that's sort of aesthetic. This has all sorts of significance, for the good health of the community. And so that's the many different ways people contribute. They're also benefiting in many ways as these projects go forward. So this is more argument to do this kind of thing everywhere as we go forward. Thank you for all sharing your wonderful examples.
Okay, Rebecca, what's next?
I think it's one of my questions, but I think in terms of long-term effect, we have seen that the educational processes involved in all these projects, especially also what Amelia has shown in FUNDAEC, is also this this idea of having hope in the future, and that nature is a very great educational tool in a way. So we are I think underestimating it, because a lot of the traditional educational processes don't include nature at its core. And we have seen that also with the friends from Brazil, that they have been able to build on these processes that were already taking place before the disaster hit, so that it could just continue to build at, of course, a more pressure level. But I think it's very interesting that we see this within a formalized system in FUNDAEC, for example, but also with neighborhood gardening in Singapore and in the United Arab Emirates. And I think these projects also show the direction where we're going to. So that's very highlighting. So there's a question about how do if any of the speakers have insights into ways of drawing the wider community into these projects?
I think it's a way of engaging, and then in terms of the intense activities like prayers and all that, to promote the activities, to promote to the government and the local authorities about what we are doing in our neighborhoods. So that will help to spread the word. That's what we are experiencing, and we find that it's useful for us to build in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods. And these examples can be replicated, especially in urban areas. The whole Singapore is urban. So we can replicate this in the neighborhood. So other children classes are trying to do it in their own condos and estates, in terms of growing their own trees, and what Ada mentioned, in your own backyard, you can do something, safe kitchen waste and all that. So being thinking all the time about how to build a greener earth.
I would imagine that the foundation that was laid in Brazil before the flooding involved a lot of the wider community. Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, because when we started as a more systematic in 2019, the focus really was not from like Baha'is going to a location to offer a program, but how to give to the population this power of being responsible for their own transformation. So really, I would say 99% of the people involved today are the wider population that participate on a daily basis. So all those pictures that we share and the friends that really took the response into action were the wider population.
And they were able to do that because
well, we're just trying to put into action what the house describes of focusing in a smaller area, work with it in intensity, constant reflection, what were we doing, what we think the next steps, which transformations are we seeing, which transformation we want to see, what can we do to change our reality, how each individual, even if have like a limited amount of time, can contribute to this process. So it's really how we see potential in every single person and give the opportunity. Because sometimes people have this desire to serve, but then they're not given the opportunity to serve. So if they have the desire, immediately it will help them to put into action.
Yeah, I think hearing about projects like that are so inspiring. The ones that involve the wider community to a great extent. But if one is not involved in such projects, it looks a little bit daunting to figure out how to get from nothing to wide engagement. 99% of the participants are not coming from the Baha'i community, but from the wider community, and that is a very exciting development. Are there particular challenges in getting from A to B? What would those be? How do you grow something like that?
I recommend, if you didn't, to everyone in the house, share a video, an expansive perspective that shows this development process in our cluster. But it's really how, like reading the guidance to found an area that has receptivity, and how, choosing an area, working in intensity, being systematic, believing in everyone, and it's really how we give this process to the population, and how we listen to the population, and we reflect about everything that's happening.
Yeah. Beautiful. Any of the panelists have reflections they want to share now as we come to a close? We're about at 90 minutes, but not quite. Let me ask Ayman, you have any thoughts about where to go from here with your project?
Yes, we learned a lot from all the experience we heard. Brazil and all, it was very inspiring us. Hopefully we can have we can make this service project more fruitful, more, and serving the community and neighborhoods more, hopefully.
Yeah, I think taking those steps that Lucas outlined, about engaging the wider community. You have that a lot already, but obviously there's always more. And Halldór, it seems that your project is one that involves a limited number of people at this point, but it has potential benefits for the wider community, particularly when you get people coming in to enjoy the fruits of what's happened there.
Yes.
But do you see collaborative initiatives going on, not just people coming to visit, but people contributing in the future?
Yes, I do. And I think we are now come to a point that our efforts are being noticed. And so it's people are interested in contributing to it. There's also quite a bit of networking going on with similar projects in the region, because the West Fjords of Iceland are considered the more challenging reforestation areas. And so it's encouraging. We visit each other and learn from each other. And so I think there is quite a bit of opportunities ahead of us in terms of greater cooperation, and we are quite ready to share the ownership and open up the project for others to contribute. Recently, the Road Building Authority was building a road not far from our site, and they had to go through old birch forest, and by law they have to then replant that. And they approached us and asked if they could come to our site and do the replanting on our site, and this we accepted. So
Right.
there are examples of very concrete partnerships already.
Beautiful. Amelia, do you have any thoughts on where the PSA project is going from here
Yeah,
in terms of further expansion or engagement with the
think-
wider community?
yeah, I wanted to add actually about the question of getting from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are many things involved in that, but from what I understand of FUNDAEC's history, is also this sort of, I don't know, I think for a long time I would hear this term, long-term approach. I think like, yeah, basically not doing short-sighted one-time projects. But I think being in that environment in Colombia and seeing and understanding FUNDAEC's history, it's really like 50 years of efforts, of learning, of not feeling so much pressure to see results immediately. And even there was a lot of like different moments of pushback, and lack of support for FUNDAEC, but they kind of just kept going and trying to learn. And as Lucas was mentioning, involving other members, other people in the conversation, trying to consult with them, how do we move forward? So I think that's kind of the reason why it has even been able to last this long, 50 years in a region, in a country. And the other thing is that because of that experience, now it's so much easier to introduce the PSA program to some of these newer regions. So where I was, they had maybe a year of experience, like starting to open up groups. But it was a fresher region as compared to other areas. But because FUNDAEC had other programs, other initiatives where they were building that relationship with the community and learning together with them, then there was so much more trust than was initially present. And so maybe that's just another thing to highlight from that experience, is that initially there might be those challenges, but when you're thinking of a long-term approach, you're thinking of actually several generations being connected to a process.
I'm tremendously inspired by what each of you is doing in the projects that you've spoken about, and I think it provides lots of examples of future thinking that can feed into the Forum for the Future. These kind of initiatives are a great example of things happening at the grassroots that have profound implications for the wider effort, the global effort. So thank you so much to each and every one of you. Arthur, do you have any final thoughts to share?
I think you said it very well. I think there's clearly a recognition that we need to make fundamental transformations in society, and the top-down approach doesn't usually work very well, and the Baha'is are really developing a very bottom-up approach, starting in communities, building capacity to address, and then this can then scale up from there and spread, as you see with FUNDAEC and others, and with time, more and more this reaches to higher levels and sets an example for how we can transform for the future. So thank you all for your important contributions, and let's hope that we'll continue to plant seeds and watch these trees grow and bear wonderful fruits that will be carried on from generation to generation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.